Hey guys, welcome back to my another video on the Monstack series. I believe this is the episode 5, and on this episode we will be looking into integrating our routes with JSON Web Token so that we can authorize the user for our to-do routes. So we already completed the authentication portion, so we created routes for register and login. So if you guys haven't checked that video out, so I would recommend to do so, because all of the thing that I'll be doing here is related to the previous episodes. So without further ado, let's get started on today's video. So in order to authorize the user, we're going to be using JSON Web Tokens. So if you want to learn more about JSON Web Tokens, you want to go to jwt.io, and you can get the introduction or documentation of why we need this and why we can, like how can we make a use of this. To make a long story short, basically we'll be using to authorize the user. So the process is whenever the user registers or logs in within our system, we're going to send back some sort of token. And every time the user makes like subsequent request, user has to provide the token that we previously sent. So if the token is not there, we won't be able to give them the data back. So basically that's how we will handle the authorization. And the package that we'll be using to interact with JSON Web Token is called JSON Web Token itself. You can go to npm and check out their docs if you want. So now we know what we'll be using. Let's start by installing it. So I want to go to terminal and I want to do npm I JSON Web Token. So that should install the JSON Web Token package for us. So let me close that terminal. Before even integrating with our JSON Web Token, what I'll do is I'm going to have to make a small change on the models and specifically on to-dos model. So right now we only have a to-dos data over here. So now since we have created the authentication routes and created the user model, now what we need to do is we need to add a field called user, so that we know if some user adds a to-do, we will know that where that to-do belongs to. What I mean by that is on which user this to-do has association. So we need to have some sort of relationships, because otherwise so if I open the Postman here, let me bring on the screen right here. So right now, if I hit the get request, right, I'm gonna get all of the to-dos back. I'm not gonna have that. Like later on, we're gonna make this route private on this video. At that time, let's say if the user one adds the to-do, then if the user one provides his or her token, we should only show the to-dos related to that user. So for that to happen, we're gonna have to add few fields over here, not few fields, only one field called user, and that way we'll have a strict control over the to-dos. All right, let's start using that then. So here we want to have a field called user, and it's going to be an object. It's going to be of type, since this is going to be the user type, we already have the users model right here, right? If we go to model and users model, this is the schema itself. So the type of this is going to be, okay, let's add a comma in there. All right, the type is going to be mongoose dot schema, CHEMA, and then dot types dot object ID. So basically this is going to be the object ID of the schema, mongoose schema, and it's going to be a required field as well. I'm simply going to say required to true, and we're going to have to provide a reference to the model that we're trying to refer to. That's why there is a property called ref, and inside that we can pass a string called user. The reason I passed user over here is if you go back to user model, I named this model as user. That's why you want to pass that one. If you have something different over here, you want to pass whatever the value is here. So now once I do that, now every time the user creates a to-do, there should be a field called user with their ID in there. So now that will provide an association, which will be handy for us later on when we are trying to use these get post requests. Because let's say if the user one has a first to do, then users shouldn't be able to like get that to do or manipulate any sort of actions on this specific object right here. That's why we need this association. I think we are good with to-do model 2. Now we can close this one, and let's close the user model 2. Right now, let's clean up this file explorer. Now, what we want to do now is we're gonna start integrating the JSON Web Token. So before even start integrating it, we're gonna have to generate the token, right? So for that to happen, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to source and create a folder there called utils, and inside that I'm gonna create a simple helper function, which is gonna say generate token.js. And here I'm gonna bring the JWT, which we just installed. Require, it's gonna come from JSON Web Token. Here I'm gonna write a function which is gonna take an argument of ID, and it's gonna create a token, JSON Web Token based on that. So before even writing the function, I wanna go to .env file, and over here, in order to use the JSON Web Token on your project, there is a field called JWT, like JSON Web Token secret, which you have to provide on the env file, because you don't want to expose that. So if you expose that, it's like there's no point of having the token itself. It's not safe. So this is going to be private for all of the projects that you do. So you want to put it somewhere, like where the other people can access it. So I'm going to create a property called JWT underscore secret, and you can pass any sort of string here. So I'm just going to say super safe secret. Now, since I updated the env file, what I'll do is I will go back to terminal, and I'm going to do Control-C and start the server again so that it picks up the new env files values. I'm going to close that. Now let's start writing the function. So I'm going to name the function as generate token equals to, it's going to take the parameter of ID, and it's going to be a arrow function. And here I'm going to do module.exports equals to, and just copy and paste that function right there. Now over here we're going to write the function definition. So we're going to do the simple return statement here, and we're going to use the JWT that we imported earlier. And in order to generate a token, there is a function called sign right there, and it takes a few arguments. So the first argument is what you are trying to store within that token. For this use case, we are trying to store the ID so that every time the user sends that token, we can parse out the ID out of it. So that way, it will help us to do the database manipulation for all of our to-dos routes. And the second argument is the JSON Web Token secret, which we have it on our env file. So we're going to do process.env.jwt underscore secret. And the third argument, you can pass an option over here. There is a property called expires in. So basically what it does is how long does this token is valid. So let's say for this example, let's just make it valid for 30 days. And just simply do expires in. Inside the string, I'm just going to say 30D, which means this token will be invalid after 13 days. I think we should be good on our generation too. Now since we're able to generate the web token, JSON Web Token, now what we need to do is every time the user logs in, right, we want to send that JSON Web Token, right? Because that way, as soon as the user either registers or logs in, then we will send out that token, and user will grab that token and make a subsequent request for their to-dos. Now I want to go to user controller, and I want to bring that function with const generate token, and we're gonna get that from require do dot dot slash, go to util slash generate token, and save that. So the only thing that we need to do is, as soon as the user is registered or logged in, we will send out this token. So the way we send out the data is in whenever the user is able to create something in the database, right, with the 201 response code on register. So now let's start sending out the token. We're going to send out the property called token, and it's going to come from we're going to use that function that we imported earlier, and you can pass the ID over here, and the ID is going to be new user dot ID. So that should pass the ID from the ID that we were sending it as a response, and what it will do, it will go back here to this function, and it's going to assign a new JSON web token, and it will return that value, and we are simply sending out to the user itself. So now what I'm going to do is, before even registering it, I'm going to go back to my database and go to users, and inside the users I'm going to delete all of the users that we have so that we can start the fresh copy. Alright, so that is deleted. So I'm going to go to register. Let's do foobar and start sending it. Alright, as you can see now we get the extra field called token, and this is the value that we get. And now what we can do is, I can simply copy this token, go back to jwt.io, and if I paste this value in there, as you can see there is a field called ID, and if you look at this ID carefully, this is the same ID that we're getting it back from our database. So this is going to be really useful later on, because we can, every time we send out the JSON web tokens, every time we have access to JSON web tokens, we will have the access to the ID that we are storing here. And it also has the issued at and expiry date. So basically it's going to be exactly after 30 days it's going to expire. Now let's create another user with John, and let's say John, hold on, John at gmail.com, and John's password is going to be John123. If we send that one out, it's going to return a new JSON web token, and which is going to be handy. All right, and if I send it again, it should say email address, so it's working as expected. Now let's test the login one. I'm going to go to login, John at Gmail, John123. I'm hoping to get the JSON web token on this login route too, or did I make a change or not? I think I did not. I just added for the register. So there you, also what I need to do is just copy this code, come back on the login one. Before even sending the request, you will provide the extra field called generate token. But here we are saying the user, not a new user. So I'm going to do user.id. So as soon as that is done, now I'm going to send this one. As you can see, I get the token back. All right, now we have the ability to grab the token. We have the ability to generate a token, and we have the ability to grab the token whenever the user logs in or registers. Now the next thing to do is to make the routes that we have for this get route, right? Let's see if I can bring this on the right. Right now, anyone can access this route. So as soon as we use this get, post, or like put and delete, we're getting a bunch of to-dos over here, and these to-dos, all of these to-dos are not related to any user at all, so any user can grab this. So we want to make this all of these routes private. So what we will do is we will create a middleware where we will take the token, and we're going to verify that token because we need to make sure that token is the valid token, and based on that we will use that middleware to make all of these routes private. Before even making any change, I'm going to quickly commit this change. It's status, right, git add, git commit, and I'm going to say finished code for generate token. All right, so now that is done. So I'm gonna go to source folder, and I'm gonna create a folder called middlewares, and inside that middleware I'm gonna create a new file called auth middlewares.js. all right, so basically what middlewares are, if you don't know, is I believe I explained it on my previous episodes. Just to make these things super simple and super quick, basically middlewares are the pieces of function that runs between your request and the response cycle. So they will have access to both of the request and response, and that is going to be quite handy to validate the token, right? Because let's say if you make a request, and when it comes to server, you have the token, and you will make sure before sending out the response you will validate if that token is valid or not, or like if that token even exists. That's what we will be using here. So over here we're gonna bring a couple of things. So first thing would be JWT, and it's gonna come from JSON web token, and we're gonna need the users model too. So I'm gonna say const user equals to require, I'm gonna go to / models / user model. Now over here we're gonna create a function. So the name of the function would be const private route equals to, it's going to be an asynchronous function, and it's gonna have a request, response, and next function. So since this is a middleware, that's why we have to provide next. So I will show you guys in a second why we need that. And let's say if you don't provide the next function to your middleware, if you send the request, the request is gonna just stay, like it's just gonna make a request forever. It's not gonna end at all. You need to basically the main task of the next here is to make sure as soon as this middleware is done, move on to the next step. That's what it does. If you don't run this function, it's just gonna stay on the same place forever. And I think you will get a 504 or 502. I forgot the name of the timed out HTTP code. So your request will eventually time out. Right, it's gonna be an arrow function. And so now once we declare this private route middleware, we need to export it. So I'm going to do module.exports equals to, it's going to be a private route. Copy that and paste it right there. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to validate the token, or we're going to do some string manipulation so that we can parse out the token that's coming from the client. So I'm going to name a variable over here called auth token. It's gonna start as undefined, and before even attempting to validate the token, we're gonna check if the token exists itself on the header. So on Express, the way to access the header is, if headers are present on request and response both, right? But in this case, we are actually interested in checking up the request header because client is going to send the request. So the way to access request header is we just want to call it request dot headers dot, and there is a property called authorization on headers, authorization, and we're going to check if that authorization field exists or not. And the second thing we're going to check is request dot headers dot authorization and dot starts with, and we're going to check it against the word bearer. The reason we are doing this is whenever the client makes the request and adds the header in the authorization, your token is going to be followed by the word bearer. Since this is you're bearing something, this is called the bearer token, and it's the industry standard. So that's why we are checking and make sure like the bearer word exists over there, and the token is started with the bearer. All right, now if we once we validate that, if both of the things are there, we're going to use a try catch block here. And inside the try catch block, I will simply get the header, not the header, get the JSON web token from the header. So I'll just do auth token equals to, right, we're going to use request.headers.authorization again. Since this is coming in the format of bearer space our JSON web token, we need to extract this JSON web token part. So it's going to be bearer space JSON web token. So how do we do that? So we're going to use the split method from the string itself. So once we get that bearer space token from here, we're going to use dot split function. And the split function actually what it does is you can provide an argument to it, and based on that argument it's just going to change the string into an array. So the argument that we want to provide is going to be the string with the space in there. And what it does is, let's say for example, if your token is coming as bearer space and just random string, since you're trying to split based on this empty string right here, I mean the empty space, sorry guys, empty space right here, it's what it's going to do is it's going to create an array with two values in there. So this is going to be the first one, first like indexed value, and this is going to be the second indexed value, right? So that's why, I mean, sorry, not the first and second index. I mean, you can say it as first and second index, but this is going to be the 0th index, and this is going to be the first index, because on the arrays it starts at 0. Now, once we split this, we know that our token is going to be the 1th index, right? So only thing that we need to do here is use the bracket sign and do 1. So this will give us the token from our header. Let me get rid of this. Oops. I hope you guys are not getting confused here at all, because we're just doing simple string manipulation so that we can extract the token out of our header. That's pretty much it what we're doing. Now here I'm going to add a comment saying verify the JWT token. Alright, now once we extract the token, now we need to verify it. The way to do that is we're going to use the JWT. So I'm just going to say decoded token equals to, and I'm going to call the JWT that we imported, and there's a function called verify. So what it's going to do is it's going to take the token that's coming from the client, and it's going to try to match up with our secret that we added on our env file, because we used the secret to create our JSON web token. So we should be validate using the same secret. So if there is something wrong within the secret, or like within the token, this is not going to get verified. Over here, all we need to pass is auth token and our secret process .env.jwt _secret. All right, we should get a verified token from there. Now what we need to do is we need to use the user model that we grabbed, so that we can use this decoded token, and we can like add the user's data to it, which is going to be ID in this case. So the way to do it is I'm just going to simply get the user data from JWT token. Here I'm just going to do request.user equals to await user dot, we're going to use a function called find by ID here, and here we're going to pass the decoded token dot ID, since we are storing the ID in there. And here what it's going to do is it's going to give all of the information back, but even though our password is hashed, we don't want to include that. So that's why we have to use the select function from Mongoose just to select, and over here inside the string you can pass all of the things that you don't want to include it here. So I'm just going to do minus password, so that should omit the password within the JSON web token payload. All right, now we are done with everything from our middleware. As I mentioned, we need to grab this next from here, and I'm just gonna come here, call it, and we're good to go. And over here, the only thing left to do is catch some sort of error. If there is some sort of error, then I'm just gonna say rest.status of 401, which is going to be the unauthorized code, Json. All right, now we're going to send the message of something like not authorized. And after this if statement right here, we're going to check if the token, auth token, exists as a whole, auth token. So we're going to fall into these if blocks if there is an auth token. Like if there is some sort of authorization token on the header, even though if it's valid or not, we fall into this if block. But over here, we're gonna fall if there is no token at all, if the user does not provide anything at all. So if that's the case, then we're gonna simply send the 4.1 as well, but we're gonna send a slightly different message, because here we can't say not authorized, but we will say please add token, because in this case there is no token at all. All right, I think we are done with this middleware too. And just to make sure you guys got everything right, so we're going to be using to make our routes private. We are checking if there is if our request header has the authorization or not. Here we are checking if the authorization header starts with bearer word or not. If that's the case, then we are trying to grab the token using the split method from our header, and we are here trying to verify the token based on the client secret, not client secret, JWT secret that we have. So that will like decode our token. And here we're trying to get the user data without the password and adding as the part of the request.user. So what this will allow us to do is every time we use this middleware anywhere in our routes, we will get access to the user. And which you will see in a second, like once we start integrating with our to-dos route, like why we are doing this. All right, let's check if we have anything on the console. Nope, looks like everything is good, hopefully. Now we're gonna move into okay, let's start making our routes private. Actually, let's close this one. I think we're done with generate token too, and if I'm not wrong, we should be good on user controllers too. Now we're gonna go to routes, and we're gonna go to to-dos routes, because right now these are all public. We want to make these routes private. So in order to make any routes private, as we discussed, we're going to use this auth middleware, and I'm gonna copy this function actually, because I'm gonna go back to to-dos routes here, and I'm gonna bring that that middleware I just created. It's gonna say private route, and it's gonna come from to // go to middlewares / auth middlewares. And the way to make the routes private is, all you need to do is right after before you even pass the controller, you just need to pass this private route middleware, and now this should be a private route based on the like our middleware. Now let's test this one out. This is the GET request, right, for our to-do. So if I send it, it's gonna say a message of saying please add token, and we're gonna do the same thing here as well. I'm gonna copy that, paste it right there. All right. Now all of our routes should be private now. Now how do we start adding the token now? So the way to add the token is, I'm gonna log in. So this is the login. So this is John's email. I'm gonna grab this token because this is the token that we need to pass. Otherwise, it's not gonna allow us to access any sort of routes. I'm gonna go to get to-dos routes, and the way to pass your token is you can go to headers and add the field called authorization and pass the token in there. But what Postman allows us to do is there is a specific tab called authorization, and right now it's no auth, right? What you want to do is you want to go to bearer token, and over here you can paste your token. Now let's send it. All right, there is something wrong going on. Okay, let's see here. Request.header.authorization starts with is not a function. Did I mess up anything here? Request.headers.authorization. Alright guys, we're gonna have some debugging session here. Let's cancel that. Right, there is some problem here. If there is a request dot headers dot authorization and request dot headers dot authorization dot starts with, oh, it should be starts with, not start with. Oh man, sorry about that. Now let's try it again. All right, now it worked. So that was the problem. I'm glad we fixed it. But now the problem is, even though we're able to access the route with our token, but we're still getting all of the to-dos back. I mean, it makes sense, right? Because we haven't done, like toss that controller part. Now we're going to do that. So now what we're going to do now is we want to go to our controllers section. Where is that? I want to go to to-dos controller. Now we're going to start by fixing the get to-dos, and we're going to move on to update, delete, and I think update, delete, and add to-dos. So let's fix the add to-dos. First, what we need to grab is we're going to need our user model on this one. So we're going to import that const user equals to require, and it's going to come from dot slash model slash user model. So we're going to need that. And here what we are doing is we are just trying to find out the all to-dos, right? But instead what we want to do is we want to pass an object for our find function, and the find function is going to look for the user field within our database, and the user field that we're trying to look at is request.user.id. So if you're confused, how is this request.user.id is coming from? It's coming from the middleware itself. So that's why we added this user request.user right here, so that we can make a use of the token, and everywhere we make a use of this token, we're going to have access to users. All right, now let's close this to-do routes. Let's go back to to-dos. So basically, instead of just finding everything at once, we will just find the to-dos for that specific user. If everything is good, we're going to send the 200 back. If something is bad, we're going to send the 404 back. Now let's test it. Now I'm going to send. Now I get no to-dos at all. I mean, it makes sense, right? There is no to-do for this user, John, on our database. That's why we get the empty string back, or empty array back. Now we are done with get to-dos. In order to see if it is working properly, we're going to have to make sure we add our code for add to-dos first. So that way it's going to, and now that way we're going to be able to access this get to-dos again. So the only thing that we need to do is over here we're sending out the creating based on the to-do, right, which is going to be the body data, and it's going to come from requested body. Now before before creating it, we want to pass the extra field to it, which is going to be the user. The reason now we can pass the user over there is if you remember from, I think it was in the beginning where we made it sense. If you go to to-do routes, or not to-do routes, if we go to model and to-do model, we added a new field called user. Right now we can make a use of that field, and the field, the data for our user is going to be on our request. That will be request.user.id. Now once we save it, I believe that should be it for add to-dos as well. So let's go to post, and if we just send it right away, it says please add token because we don't have a token. I'm going to copy this token. So this is going to be the John's token, by the way. I'm going to go to authorization, bearer token, come back here, paste it. I'm going to go back to body, do John's first to do. Now let's try to send it. All right. We added the data, and it also added the user field there. Now let's try to access that data using the John's token. So we should only see one data from here, which is going to be the John's to-do. And if I send it, I can see the John's to-do. Now let's add one more field here. I'm gonna say John's second to-do. Send it. Now if I go back, I'm going to see the John's second to-do. So just to make sure, like we have bunch of information on our database, I'm going to open our database here, go to to-dos. As you can see, we have first to-do, second to-do, and there we have extra field called John first to-do and John second to-do, and we are only getting these to-dos back, the last two. We're not getting these two because they don't have a user to it. All right, now the other thing to do is just to make sure, again, let's test this again. I want to log in as foo, and I'm going to go to foo here, and I'm going to use the token from foo, paste it there. If I go there, I won't see any to-dos because foo does not have any to-dos yet. So our add to-dos and get to-dos are working as expected. So for the update, what we want to do is over here, what we are doing is we are doing find by ID and update. Before that, we need to do a couple of basic checks to make sure we are doing the right thing here. So after checking if there is not to-do or not, what we want to do is we want to check if there is a user first. We're going to use await and do user dot find by ID, and we're going to use the ID from request dot user dot ID. And once we get the user, we're going to check if there is a user or not. If there is not a user, then we're going to do res.status of 401, which means not authorized, Json, and we're going to send the message saying user not authorized. If there is not a user, then the next check that we need to do is we need to make sure the logged in user matches the to-dos that we found on our database. Because if you are John and you're trying to update or delete anything from the database, you should only be able to update and delete your to-dos, not Foo's to-dos, right? So that's what we are trying to check. I'm going to have a simple if check over here, and I'm going to do to-do dot user. Before checking, I'm going to use the toString function from JavaScript, and I'm going to do if the to-do dot user dot toString is not is not equal to user dot ID, then what we will do again is we're gonna send the 401 back right there and say user not authorized. Okay, if there is not a user, then I think over here we have to say something. If the user is not there at all, then we're gonna say user does not exist. All right, now if that is not the case, then we're going to send a 401 saying user not authorized. If everything is good, then we're going to use find by update, and I think that should be it. Yep, I think that should be it in terms of what we need. Perhaps at IT, make sure I don't miss anything here. Yep. Yeah. Now the only thing left to do for delete to-dos is the similar thing. Right before we remove it, we're gonna grab the code we added here, copy that, and just paste it in there. So that should make sure all of our routes are private and they should have the correct access to everything. All right, let's test it out. So this is Foo's account. So I'm gonna copy that and go to authorization so that I can add a few to-dos for Foo. Go to body. This is gonna be Foo's first to-do. Let's add second to-do. Let's add one more. To-do. So if I go back, so this is the Foo's token that I added earlier. Now if I go back, I should see the data from Foo's. Now what I want to do now is I want to update the to-do from Foo, which I'm going to update the third to-do here. I'm going to come here. As you remember, we're going to have to pass the ID as params. And if I just send it right there, it's going to say please add token. I want to go to authorization. I'm going to go to bearer token, and let's see where I can get that. Copy that and paste that right there. Now I want to go to body, and for to do I want to update that to, it says third to do, right? So I will just want to say Foo's third to do updated. Let's send it. It says for Foo's third to do updated. Now if I run the GET request again, I should see this to do as the updated to do. There you go, it is updated. Now I'm going to use the same thing to delete. I'm going to go back to delete, paste that in there, the ID. I want to go to authorization, bearer token. Let me grab the token from Foo's. Come here and paste it right there and send it. It says a message to do with ID is deleted. Now if I go back here, I shouldn't see this to do object at all since we deleted that. If I go here, yeah, I can only see two to-dos. I think that should be it, if I'm not wrong. Yep, I think that should do it. So now on this tutorial, right, we were able to authorize the user based on JSON Web Token, so which is quite handy to manage our data within our database. So I think if I'm not wrong, I think we're almost done with our backend too. So I think so this is not really required video, the next episode that I'm gonna do. This sort of provided all of the information that you guys need, but what I'm gonna add on my next episode is it's gonna be a super short video. And most of the times, as you guys have noticed, if you guys are following the series, I normally upload these videos on a weekend. But what I'm going to do is, since this is not going to be the long tutorial, the next one, I'm not talking about this one, I will upload that on the weekdays right after this episode. So the basic thing, if you guys want to hear about it, so what we're going to do is right now, as you might know, JavaScript is a single-threaded application. So if we have some sort of blocking code on our application, our code is going to stop there forever. So, but that's not ideal on the real world, because a lot of users might be sending out requests, right? If you get stuck on one user, so how are we going to handle other requests? So we're going to make sure that we're going to use the Node.js cluster module to make sure of all of the CPUs that we have on our server. So I'm using a quad-core computer. So right now it's only using one core, which is not ideal. So we want to make sure it uses all of the cores that is available on the server. So we're going to do that. So that will help us to scale our application a little bit, like more easily. It's not, like the really required thing, but like most of the times when I'm working on something, I like to make the application as production ready application. So that should help you guys and give you some sort of value on that one. So I will make a quick video on that one. So once that is done, we will move on to React portion for the front end, so that we can use all of these endpoints that we created. So I think that should be it for today's video, guys. So if you guys find this video useful and if you're getting some sort of value, please consider giving a thumbs up to the video and subscribe to the channel, and that will help me a lot. I guess I will catch you guys on the next video. Thanks.